Hunter Biden intends to plead guilty to federal tax charges. Hunter Biden will plead guilty? Holy moly. What's going on here? Well, somebody who knows about Democrats and guilt far better than maybe anyone alive. Somebody who's uncovered more than anyone alive on the duplicitous nature of what Democrats can get away with whilst in office is the great Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, who joins the show live now. This is breaking news, Tom. I'm really glad that you are joining the program this morning. Thank you. Hunter Biden pleading guilty. Not sure that I'm not sure I saw this coming. He pleaded not guilty and then fought tooth and nail in Delaware against the gun charge. But now against the tax charges, he's saying I'm guilty in California. What does this say?
I think there's an indication there. I'll just warn, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer. In fact, I'm not a lawyer. But based on my significant experience as a layman, some of which is unfortunate, my guess is he's pleading guilty as part of a plea deal. And the DOJ agreed to let him plead guilty. And so there's now a path forward for the regime to avoid an embarrassing trial, however outrageously limited it was in terms of narrowing the charges to protect Joe. Nevertheless, they didn't want information coming out. And so there was an incentive for both Hunter and the Biden, Harris, Garland Justice Department to keep all of this out of court.
Does this say something about Trump's chances in November? Does this say that people are hedging? We might as well we better clean this up right away.
Well, in the least, it's a close run thing in November, right? No, I don't think anyone would dispute that. And so these are the sorts of political calculations that the Justice Department makes when proceeding against high-level political individuals. Look, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter who the target is. I don't trust the Justice Department on anything. And I have jokingly say, I want to defend Hunter, because I just think, he's obviously gotten a get out of jail free pass, get out of jail card on a lot of issues. But some of the decision making is as political as anything. And that goes for Republicans and Democrats. The Justice Department, for high-level people, political people, it's not a rule of law question. It's usually a political question.
So as we look at what's happening with President Trump, we see Trump lawyers in January 6th cases today. It seems like as the fates turn against Kamala Harris, and we're starting to see sort of a massive descent in polling. She's not adding to any coalition. The people are waking up from the sugar high, and the trends are looking quite scary if you're sitting there in Kamala Harris's camp. And all the leaks coming out of her camp is that people are very worried, especially about Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia. So as that begins, you now see Trump back in court today, or at least Trump's lawyers in court today arguing against Jack Smith. Donald Trump will be sentenced. I think he'll have to physically be there on September 18th in New York to get sentenced. And everything seems to be ratcheting up just in time to ensure that maybe Trump's behind bars by election day. Do you think that there's a chance of that happening?
That would be a radical step, but I wouldn't put it past Murchie. And if I were on Trump's team, if I were President Trump, I'd be very concerned that he'd order Trump be immediately taken into custody. I mean, this is a lunatic fringe that's running the justice system, specifically with respect to this case. And their contempt for the Supreme Court in this process. The Supreme Court essentially said, everyone who's charging Trump, you need to go back to the drawing board and make sure everything from the get-go complies with our constitutional direction here, that the immunity that a president has be taken into account at every stage of the proceeding. And that wasn't done here, obviously. Some Clinton appointing the federal court didn't want to help Trump out. And I think the question is there going to be a Second Circuit appeal, which is the circuit that handles New York, or will the Supreme Court have to come in and tell Merchant to stand down? I think that might be the result, because I do think there's this kind of the Trump derangement syndrome is a very real issue, and anti-Trump animus is destroying our justice system with the courts who are caught up in this TDS.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, how does Jack Smith carry on? Like, how does Jack Smith continue on after the smackdown in Florida? It does seem like wild to me, like parallel universes, that Jack Smith can have such a professional disgrace and humiliation, which of course he's like quite used to at this point, but he can have that in Florida and then move right back up to DC and begin operating with Tanya Chutkan today.
Well, he's got friendlier courts up here in DC. He's got Chutkan, who's on his side. The appellate court's likely to be on his side on the issue about whether he's a valid appointee and not a rogue prosecutor. Chutkan, I'm sure, is going to continue to harass Trump up until the election and try to time. She said today the election has no impact on her timing. Well, of course it should have an impact on her timing. To say it doesn't is, suggests to me it's the exact opposite. Of course it needs to have an impact on her timing, especially since what we're talking about are largely ministerial issues, right? In the sense that there's no deadline. So to create fake deadlines to put Trump in a corner before the election is political. But we should expect more of the same from Chutkan. And hopefully they recognize the Supreme Court is there's no harm if they win, right? And if they lose, they lose. But it's all or nothing now. So they're going to exercise every act of gamesmanship they can to further compromise the election. Because I want to go back and tell your listeners and viewers something. The election's already compromised. And the question is, will the compromised nature of the election result in an outcome that the people don't trust?
Can you unpack that? Are you saying that the election is compromised due to the amount of lawfare that we've seen, President Trump having spent months now sitting in a courtroom and not campaigning, and everything from mugshots to assassination attempts?
That's right. He's facing the threat of jail. How is that not distracting from his campaign? He spent weeks in a courtroom unnecessarily. He spent untold time and resources and campaign resources dealing with this lawfare. That's putting your thumb on the scales, and obviously that benefited the opposition campaign. At the time we thought it was the Biden campaign. It turns out it was some sort of ghost campaign. The nominee to be determined at a time to be at some uncertain time. I don't even know if the nominee is determined now, given the way things are. I tell you, and let's not pretend that it won't be further compromised, as I say, with some crazy attempt to jail Trump up there in September. But on the other hand, maybe the federal courts will say we're stopping this circus.
So do you believe that there could be some type of interceding end to all of this before the election? Because based on my reading of the Constitution, this is a direct interference in a federal election that would give, obviously, the Supreme Court supreme power to end it.
Yeah, I mean, the courts aren't going to say it's election interference, my guess is, because the courts are afraid of election disputes. But in this case, the Supreme Court ruled pretty explicitly about the presidential immunities and the protections it affords President Trump and other former presidents, including this current soon-to-be former president. And so I do think there's going to be an intercession there. I think if I were Trump's team, I would think of every legal stratagem to keep him out of that courtroom because his freedom's on the line.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to say, oh, well, if you're sentenced to jail, we'll appeal. You don't want to get sentenced to jail. Strategies to keep you out.
You're a pretty smart guy, Tom. I guess in closing, wouldn't sentencing Trump to jail in truly the small hours in the eve of an election, would that be possibly the greatest political backfire in American history? Based on everything that we've seen on this strategy so far, it just failed on every conceivable lane and on every conceivable step. It seems to have made Trump stronger on the process of every path, including but not limited to Donald Trump bringing it up in the debate to Joe Biden's face. And I'm sure he intends to do so to Kamala in a week from now.
Yeah, it's becoming, I think you may be right there in the sense that the left is a little bit afraid of this. And there's been a kind of a little bit of a hesitation by Bragg and Jack Smith to kind of speed this along in a way that suggests, A, they're afraid of the Supreme Court, and B, they're afraid of the political consequences. And to be clear, it should be reversed. It's always the political consequences first for the Putin-like individuals running our system.
In closing here, Tom, and I know that you've come on many times to quite hilariously and entertainingly talk about one of your favorite people on the planet, which is Big Fannie Willis and Nathan's Hot Dog. You're the one who said that obviously she needs to be disbarred and potentially criminally investigated in Georgia. Her daughter was arrested, and in the cop body cam footage, there's this funny Easter egg. I think we can pop it up as a play beside here of Nathan Wade. So apparently they're still like hanging out. They told the court that their relationship is over, and here they are like in plain clothes, like going on vacation together. What's going on here, Tom?
Come on, Benny. It's her lawyer. It's purely a legal relationship. There was a legal crisis, and out of every criminal defense lawyer in the entire Atlanta metro area, the elected district attorney of the most populous county could only think of one man to call.
Yes, and he's in there in a t-shirt. He's there in a t-shirt. So it's cool.
Well, I'm just glad to see that the romance continues, despite the pressure and the world being against them.
That's right, Tom. How could you hate love so much? How could you try and break up their unrequited
It's a love story that's rocking the republic.
Modern day Romeo and Juliet.
I mean, talk about contempt for the rule of law. I mean, but to be more serious, thumb in their nose, right?
Truly, they maintained and represented to the court and our viewers, right, that were watching by the millions, that this relationship was over. It was done years ago, and here they are today, bailing their daughter out of jail. I don't think it's their daughter, but bailing Fannie Willis's. We call her Little Fannie. It's Big Fannie and Little Fannie out of jail. So
that case hopefully goes nowhere as well. But another example, just another example. And we had a case. I don't know if you heard. I haven't talked about this. We had a court yesterday tell us that there's no public interest in finding out who Jack Smith's top people are trying to jail Trump.
Really?
He gets to keep all those names secret.
His entire team? It's like the Jay Bratt team.
We didn't ask for the secretaries' names. Yeah. We want, who are the equivalent of assistant U.S. attorneys who are trying to jail Trump? Oh, no, we don't want them to be hurt or harassed. There's no public interest in finding out if they hired Michelle Obama to help prosecute Trump. For all we know, Michelle Obama could be working there. I'm being facetious, but that's the point. We don't know who's working there.
Wow. I mean, if Jack Smith puts his office inside of a mansion on a private island, you have a very high probability that Michelle Obama will show up. There's this amazing phenomenon where she goes to the DNC convention and talks about how bad and evil people who take too much for themselves are. And then she goes back to one of...
Well, maybe they're renting some space in Obama's mansion now over there in Colorado.
Yeah, maybe. That's right. The only president that just moved right down the street, never left D.C. So interesting.
First time in 100 years a president has remained in D.C.
So it was a very short flight from the Capitol building.
The only prior president recently who did that was Wilson, and he was sick. He couldn't leave.
They saved a lot on helicopter fuel. You see, it's for the environment. They just take off from the Capitol, go to Colorado. It's like 2 minutes.
And the Secret Service must love it since it's their home office,
Yeah, that's exactly right. Maybe they have a good. Hopefully, they have a good protection plan there. Hopefully, they have a good protection plan for every president. But
well, not in place for the chef.
Yeah. When you and I are dead, Tom, they'll still be searching for the Thomas Crooks's real motivation. We'll find out one of these days.
We don't know how the shooter got up on the roof. That's a mystery. Everything's a mystery. And it's amazing how all these mysteries are out there.
That it happens. It truly is a universal mystery. Maybe our grandchildren's grandchildren will figure it out one day. We'll finally hear the truth. Tom Fitton, you can follow Tom Fitton and hear the truth every single day on his X account. Please go ahead and follow 2.7 million Americans. Goodness gracious, Tom. 2.7
all of them are leftist reply guys.
Yeah. Yes.
I should say all of them, but there's a significant number semi-obsessed with me. It's strange. I'm sure you get a good following in that regard too, Benny, huh?
Oh, you know what? The engagement's been great. Been great recently. Just great. So, Sue, I drink
as long as they spell your name right?
I drink your tears. That's exactly right. We thank you, Tom, the guy who's been the guy who's been probably one of the number one causes of left-wing tears in Washington D.C. for decades. The great Tom Fitton. Godspeed. Follow him.
Thank you, sir.